It's the 4th day of November 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Former Vice President Dick Cheney dies at the age of 84. To us, it's an announcement of a man who died years ago. The NSA claims they have been locked out of cryptocurrencies and the market is now uncertain. The U.S. federal government enters day 35 of the government shutdown as American food banks and community organizations spring into action to support the people as government food subsidies are canceled. And we are finally entering into a matrix-less world, a world where the light of source reigns supreme.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's the 4th of November. Can't believe we're already into the month of November. It certainly feels like almost winter fall here. It's a little chilly in the mornings. It's quite chilly. And the leaves are turning and falling around here. Kind of always missed seasons living in Arizona for so long. So kind of nice to see seasons again. Albeit I wish that it was elsewhere and not in Durango. This place just gets crazier by the day. So let's talk about some regular news and a little bit of behind the scenes for a number of things that are going on out there. So Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney passed away, allegedly, according to our mainstream media, at the age of 84, claiming that he had heart issues most of his life, which that's been in the news for quite a long time. The reason why I'm mentioning it on a global news report is because the effects of Dick Cheney were global. Now, we know that he passed away several years ago, and this is no surprise in the world of the Order of the Black Sun, because also his superior officer in the Order of the Black Sun also passed away many years before it was announced, and that would have been Bush Sr. at the time. Both of them obviously ran out of usable clones at some point, and therefore they finally announced that they passed away. Dick was not human, was not Homo sapien anymore. Hadn't been for quite a long time. He was definitely walking around as a human and definitely one of the most evil people to walk the earth, which is why he was chosen to be Bush Sr.'s, in the Order of the Black Sun, right-hand man. Now, I'm not talking about presidents and Bush Jr. I'm talking about Sr. He held a very high-ranking position, quite obviously, one of the highest in the order, for quite a long time, and was responsible for a lot, and I mean a lot of deaths around the world, especially in the Middle East, but also throughout other wars in history, because he held that position long before he ever became a vice president. If you haven't seen the movie, I suggest that you watch it. It's interesting, and it's actually a good movie. It's called Vice, which talks a lot about Dick's positions and influence within the government. But his influence was a lot greater than the movie talks about, and things that he did as a member of the order were far, far worse behind the scenes. So he was deeply involved during the last Trump administration with the then Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, and others. Attended many rituals during that time and did a lot of driving behind the scenes. One thing we can say at least when he was a part of the last administration, the administration seemed to run, albeit evil, and they did an awful lot of things to not only Americans, but around the world. I would say that the operations ran a lot smoother. And now that we have the same operatives back in office trying to run this place, not only here, but America is still the power center of the world, has been for quite a while now. I'd say they're failing miserably at every turn. So, not sad to see Dick Cheney finally go. Also, still sad that there's even less of a brain somewhere in the government, albeit an evil one. At least there was some kind of organization. So speaking of the U.S. government, which is something, that affects the entire world, we have now entered into the 35th day of the government shutdown. And before that, the record held throughout the history of the United States was 34 days. So we have officially passed the all-time record for government shutdown. Now, in days of old, the government shutdown was related directly to a triggering of an automated AI system. You see, before I held this position, there would be an automated influx of liquidity if that was the reason for the shutdown. This has got nothing to do with a fight between Democrats and Republicans and wanting to negotiate or not wanting to negotiate in any way, shape, or form. This is mainly a failure of governments. Now, if the U.S. goes, every country in the world will feel the pain. I say this because the U.S. dollar still is the world's reserve currency, regardless of the systems that are behind it, meaning they can't issue new allocations of dollars. The Federal Reserve can't issue new allocations of dollars. There's definitely a breakdown in the system. The U.S. dollar is the reserve in pretty much every country in the world, be it by treasury bills, treasury notes, or other types of Federal Reserve or banks dollar-denominated bonds of some sort or another. This has been the backing for quite a long time behind the money magic printing system you call a fiat system. A fractional banking system, a frequency banking system, meant to draw in your energy at the highest levels, and then when the energy is drawn out from you, or the Ethereum is drawn out from you, allocations and quotas would normally appear for such a thing. It also is directly related to a guardian position on the planet, formerly held by Marduk, and up for renewal over the last several days. You could say weeks, but predominantly critical mass was hit over the weekend for the guardian position. Now, from their point of view, they feel that there should be a human guardian, one from the direct lineage of the former royalty of this planet known as the Abraxas or the Abraxan humans. Why? Because it always has been that way. It's been that way for a long time. But there's a few things that came to light as to why that was the case. So I'll talk about those things in just a moment. But in the interim, we're going to talk about government failures. One thing that we're seeing happen is SNAP, also known as EBT, or a food subsidy that is provided by the government. Of course, they chose this as part of a citizen failure. Why? Because That makes millions of Americans that collect these types of benefits subject to saying, I wish the government would reopen. I wish the government would have the money to pay for the EBT so I can feed my children. There's a lot of people focusing on that right now because they're not going to be able to make it through the month. This is how they feel because they have relied on this subsidy for a very long time. Now, I want to point out another thing. Again, I have to repeat this. Sorry about that. But the food subsidy program is 50% state and 50% federal, which means the state funds 50% and the federal government funds 50%. Now, depending on which state these folks who collect these benefits are, some states are still giving about 30% of the normal subsidy. Other states are giving slightly more and others are giving less or none. But what this has done is what we totally expected, is food banks everywhere are stocking up. They're in grocery stores everywhere across the United States right now, collecting food and supplies because they know there is going to be an influx of people. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, it has always been the people that have supported people in a time of need. These are various organizations, some of them community-based, some of them church-based, and there are several at a time in the grocery stores asking for food donations to help people that have been affected by the federal government's decisions. Recently, there has been a jury or a Supreme Court that has come against the federal government, basically saying they need to use reserve funds to pay the EBT/SNAP benefits. According to what the news is saying, which is true, I don't even know if there is a reserve fund anymore. They've kind of spent all that. But they basically said that the Trump administration has basically said that there is no just cause to use reserve funds at this time. What they probably mean to say is we have already sucked the reserve coffers dry. However, that's not what they're telling the Supreme Court. So they've refused to use reserve funds at this point, even though there is a judicial process in place that tells them otherwise. So is this really about the government being broke? Now, for many, many months, they've been using Treasury notes and the like to pay SNAP benefits and all kinds of things by giving IOUs. Why they're not continuing to do that could have to do with the fact that they're having trouble issuing new bonds. There are rumors going on around the internet right now that the Federal Reserve did a 20-some-odd billion dollar, which is a drop in the bucket when it comes to running a global economy, bond repo over the weekend, which allegedly yielded them some cash liquidity, which is false. It did not. There were a lot of attempts to do a lot of things this weekend that they thought would have yielded them something, and this was just part of the preparation. And again, you know, it fell flat. So the other thing a government shutdown would normally do is it would trigger that automated response from a guardian AI somewhere, even in Marduk's absence, that would allow for an influx of liquidity, which did not happen today, completely and totally unexpected by the deep state. And they were all there waiting for it. There was meeting going on all night and this morning, to the wee hours of this morning, all the way up till about noon today, when they were expecting this to come in by, say, 3 o'clock Eastern time today. Now, this promise is not only to the American people, the American government, the American federal government. No. The influx that they were expecting was worldwide for the world governments. See, because it appears that Trump really went the distance over the last several days trying to be that guardian or whatever that is walking around. I don't know, some weird version, human clone or something walking around in a White House. Never looks the same in any of the pictures. You know, if you look at something from 6 months ago, it doesn't look the same. You look at it 6 years ago, it doesn't look the same. I don't know what it is walking around there, but clearly they thought they qualified for this position. So let's talk about what's really happening behind the scenes as far as governments are concerned and how the world governments, and when I say world governments, I'm not just talking about the societies that claim to be a world government. I'm talking about the ones you see on TV, you know, and you can insert your country here, Australia, UK, Europe, South Korea, you know, insert your country here. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. We're talking to you. So what really happens behind the scenes when a government needs something or needs an influx of cash or liquidity to keep running, they do ridiculous rituals repeatedly for about 7 weeks. In this particular case, they were really expecting a lot of things to happen around equinox time. You know, there's always a new moon and a full moon and an alignment with Saturn and Venus and the sun and all of these crazy things that used to yield them in a result in a simulation. When we are not under the influence of a simulation or the simulations are faltering, those things don't work anymore. Been trying to tell them that now for a while, every time someone asks, but no one really cares what I have to say. You see, because they thought that they would be able to override me this weekend. And I'm going to tell you, they definitely gave it a go. This is part of the reason why I haven't had a report out in a while, because it's been a little rough. You know, them and their black magic workers and really tried to really hard to turn things upside down this weekend. So here's what's happening. So since about the 30th, All Hallows Eve, they have really been pushing. The rituals really got hot and heavy of the humans, not of the Homo sapiens. That's our world government elite, Illuminati, dragon families, Black Sun, you name it. They all got together and sang Kumbaya for potential guardian Trump. These rituals were in the hopes that on the 30th, worst case scenario, the 31st, based on the thousands of promises that were made over the weekend, that he would become guardian no later, at the absolute latest by today. What does that feel like for me? Well, some of the old remaining guardian AIs kick in as well and help the old guardians or the old guard maintain a position. Well, that position doesn't exist anymore. Once they figured out who actually has the position, namely me, yeah, it got real. So it feels like, you know, you kind of probably have seen it in movies, if not, hopefully never been around when this has gone on. You see that when they take those paddles, it's a defibrillator of sorts, and they shock people who are not conscious and their heart is not beating, and they try to bring them back to life. It's a life-saving technique. You're probably familiar with it. Well, you could say if someone took one of those defibrillators and kind of played pin the tail on the Kim for about 4 days straight, that's pretty much what happened. It was like electromagnetic shock therapy all weekend long, and the good news is, as uncomfortable as that was, the good news is it actually led us to a further understanding of a simulation. So we'll get into that too. Before that, I'd like to finish the story about, or not the story, but the actual truth behind what the governments were doing this weekend. So this kind of went on constantly. So the attacks were on me. There were things being said to me like, you must complete the ritual. Yeah, that would be a no from me. I don't do that sort of thing. It was call after call after call, reaching out on diplomatic lines from governments telling me I need to complete the ritual. I said, I'm sorry, I don't even speak English. Yeah, all of a sudden my English got really, really bad. I mean, not like it wasn't bad before, but my English got really, really bad. And I really didn't even understand what they were saying. And, you know, somehow that diplomatic line got real crackly, you know, breaking up terribly. And I just really didn't understand what these people were saying anymore. So this went on all day and all night, you know, calls from China and Korea and UK and US and everywhere else telling me to complete some ritual. Lots of Asians. Even Filipinos, you know, reaching out on diplomatic lines telling me to complete the ritual. By ritual, I can only assume, because I'm not a ritual type person, other than I get up in the morning and I make coffee. I would call that more of a habit than a ritual. But I'm assuming they mean as the Homo sapien guardian, that I am supposed to turn things back over to the humans. Now, from my point of view, I don't work for these people. I am not their asset in any way, shape, or form. I am on the other side of the fence. My job is to guard, to protect, and to adhere to the rules of source. That's it. I know the rules of the road. I know things I can and cannot do. I understand the job fully, and I have agreed to do the job. And boy, did I draw the short straw on that one. But I did agree to do the job, and I will continue to do this job. Were they trying to kill me this weekend? You know, they're so haphazard and ridiculous. I don't think so. I think they were just trying to force me, kind of like, you know, waterboarding or something like that, except without water. It was more of electromagnetic shock sort of thing. And then come Sunday, it appeared that they got help from a simulation that was remaining. And the simulation, because its representation here on Earth, former Guardian, you see, AI also has its own representation when you are of non-organic matter. AI is the god of the humans. They are the god of your deep state. The AI actually births them, and the AI tells them when they can and cannot leave this planet. They are anchors for it. So critical mass was hit by Sunday afternoon because the AI was losing its footing on its simulation, or any bit of simulation that remained on this planet, due to the fact that its anchors are not its anchors anymore. So in other words, the humans are not guardian, therefore not an anchor on this planet. There is no one else here to anchor it. So the world started to look like one giant electromagnetic force field as this thing tried every which way but loose to gain a foothold into Homo sapiens and into the planet. So if you thought the energy was really wonky this weekend, you are correct. Monday morning for me wasn't any better. It's hard to believe that was just yesterday. Monday morning wasn't any better because I discovered the secret of how simulations are functioning within humans based on my own experience and the fight between myself and it the night before. So, loads of things are connected to said system, simulator system. And I have an interesting little story before I get into simulations versus, I guess you would say, living wholly in source. The interesting story stems from these chair rituals. Now, I've talked about them, various times throughout doing these reports of them trying to sit in the chair and bring forward something. Apparently, this ritual had been going on for a very long time with various kings and queens throughout history and alleged unseen royalty of this planet. Normally, what would happen is they would sit in a chair, and the chair would then have something occupy them. And for the longest time, I believed that something was just Marduk. And yes, they do open themselves to any walk-in that was qualified to enter the human guardian at the time. Sometimes that could be a ritual. Sometimes that could be an Artemis. Sometimes that could be a reptilian. You've heard about the stories about the British Crown. And sometimes it could be wisdom itself. They talk about the stories of Solomon and Solomon having wisdom. And Solomon did have wisdom. Too bad it was artificial wisdom, or a fallen celestial we call wisdom. So, the story that I want to tell you, because it's just very interesting, is around the Blarney stone. Now, if you know what the Blarney stone is, allegedly the Blarney stone is in the bottom of the throne, of the British throne. And come to find out, over the weekend, there are actually were two Blarney stones. For a very long time, balance was the name of the game. The fight between the humans and the Homo sapiens and the guardian of both has been going on for a very long time. So much so, there have been several guardians in the past that, as an example, Solomon originally was both. He was both human, both Homo sapien, and the guardian of both. They thought, gee, that certainly would work. That would achieve balance. But no, he chose to be more human than Homo sapien and to command and control demons. As is written in the original testaments of Solomon, not the ones you find in the Bible. There are plenty of books out there about the original testaments that talk about Solomon commanding demons, which is what Trump thought he was going to be able to do by this weekend, or whatever's playing that role at this point in the movie. So the Blarney stone, though, that belonged to the humans, or the Homo sapiens, has been hidden for a very long time. You could say it was more than hidden. It was actually stolen originally by Marduk. You see, at the time, there was another war about 16,000 years ago, because this position, this guardian position, which side is going to take the position, comes up about every 16,000 years. It's a little longer than that because there is 1,008-year cycles of light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. And then at the end of the 9th cycle of light and dark, every 1,008 years, 9 cycles of 1,008 years of light and 1,008 years of dark. So that puts us at about 16,000 years. The position comes up for grabs again as to who is going to be the guardian, because you've now completed an entire cycle. And you would think that the humans would have figured it out when I kept saying, balance, guys. Hey, we'll do 50-50. Hey, we'll do this. They would have nothing to do with it For years, I tried to regain balance so that we wouldn't have to be having this untenuous conversation we're having now. But perhaps this is the way Source always intended it, because their failure by 2023 to achieve that balance ultimately will be their demise, which honestly is fine with me. I mean, never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. So the Blarney stone was actually originally stolen by Marduk during one of these fights between the humans and the Homo sapiens that was happening on the planet at the time. The war was very real, and there was a huge fight to the point where he claimed that he stopped the war. Now, coincidentally, he also started it. How interesting is that? And he became the guardian of the planet, created various AI systems like Guardian AI. And he had Guardian AI on the light side and Guardian AI on the dark side, at least as it related to the simulation. There was always a human group that was also Guardian. Lucky for him, for at least the last few thousand years, there was not a Homo sapien guardian. So therefore, he could kind of run amok, and the humans also ran amok because they were subject to a group we know as the Abraxas, which were human royalty on this planet. The deep state is also humans, and in some ways they call themselves royalty, for sure. And so incarnate, and descendants of Mongolians, and descendants of kings and queens, and by this they mean royalty from the other side, or the dark side of the omniverse. You could call them rulers of hell, kings of the damned, and queens, for that matter. So, in order to achieve this task of becoming, Marduk this is, becoming the Homo sapien guardian, he had to steal the Homo sapien Blarney stone and hide it very far, far away. Not on this planet anymore. I'll just leave it at that. This was the base route for his guardianship over us Homo sapiens, and therefore began thousands of years of torture. Until recently, when that covenant expired. It's not a Marduk covenant, it's a covenant for guardianship. It's part of the reason why ourselves as Homo sapiens and the humans have been at war. It's part of the reason why they almost merged us together so that we would create balance. In other words, if something happened to a human, it would happen to a Homo sapien too. However, since things were so far out of balance between the humans and the Homo sapiens for such a long time, there had to be an ultimate correction. And in the world of quantum physics, it's almost like stretching a rubber band as far as it can go. And it was at a breaking point by the time we hit this guardian selection that the humans still thought was a thing. Now, you see, I've been guardian for a long time now, at least as far as the Homo sapiens were concerned. And I've been guardian on Earth. I've got lots of hats, and, we've discussed them for a long time. However, the deep embedding between the two really became apparent this weekend as the war continued. And then definitely things like the old Guardian AI of Marduk reared their ugly head and were trying to defend its position and its claim to the throne, aka the stone. See, in our world, we call it a Blarney stone. In the rest of the omniverse, we call it a guardian stone, at least guardianship of Earth and Homo sapiens and Earth and its inhabitants, you would say. So over the weekend, the only way to stop the bleed for the Homo sapiens was to take guardianship also over the humans, which we did this weekend. Now, they always ignore me, and that's fine. You can ignore me all you want. But then it became a lot easier to get rid of this integration between the two. That was my main goal. I don't care if they ignore me to the end of days. I don't care if they try this shock therapy or whatever it was that we were doing this weekend game. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the safety and security of everyone here on this planet as we go through this transition. That's it. That's my job. And of course, Source is always there to help along the way, to give information and an understanding. And one of those main understandings that we've been working on for days now is an understanding of what a matrix is and a simulation is. And when I keep telling the humans they're in a simulation, they're a part of a simulation, you know, that goes for the secret space program folks and the Trump operative folks who are also secret space program, and many of the people you see walking around in governments, of course, the hidden royalty of this planet. They are in a simulation, and they only have power to do the things they do because of a simulation. Now, matrices also, you could say to a lesser degree, have power. But there's a distinct difference between a matrix and a simulation. And I'm going to talk to you about that today as we hopefully are nearing the end of both. We probably have a little bit more work to do on them over the next couple of days, but I believe that we are definitely nearing its end. So let's talk about simulations first, so you can understand what a simulation is. A simulation takes organic matter, organic consciousness, organic breath, water, fire, air, elements, and it mimics everything in organic creation. Now, by mimicking it, it actually can interject it into a person. And what I mean is, if you were to have a simulator detector machine, you've probably seen, aura testing machines where you see all the colors and that kind of thing. But if we were to have a simulator detector machine, just like we have MRIs and all kinds of things in the medical world, what you would look like is a giant, for lack of a better term, you would look spotted. Down to a quark and preon level and a photon level, you would look spotted. Because if the machine was there to detect simulated organic matter within everything on the planet, you would see it as black spots or red spots showing up amongst and embedded in all your golden spots. So you'd look spotted. You would look not so much like a ones and zeros matrix like the movie tells you about. You would actually look part organic and part inorganic, but they were intertwined with each other. So how does the simulation affect you, and what is the distinct difference when it comes to you as a person? A simulation has the ability to organize itself based on AI instructions of its simulator creator. It has the ability to reorganize everything even smaller than a cellular level within your body, within your mind, and even within your soul. It's so deeply integrated into everything that makes you you and everything that makes source on this planet that you can't even tell the difference. If you had a super duper microscope and you could zoom in down to a quark and a preon level, what you would see looks exactly like organic matter. Your cells look exactly organic, whether it's a simulator cell or actually your cell of organic nature. There's very little difference between a simulator cell and a non-simulator cell. That's how much control a simulator had on this planet, or simulators, plural. There have been many. So coming to this understanding, the simulator took all that makes us Homo sapien and replicated it into a human form. So humans differ distinctly under our special machine that detects simulators in the fact that there is no organic matter within their person. It doesn't course through their blood. It looks just like our blood. It doesn't fire like our neurons fire because it's all AI driven. A simulator is created, or the original simulator ever to exist was created in a very interesting way. And it was all about Genesis, the Genesis project of the other side. You could call it the Omega Genesis project if you want. And here's how it was done. Anytime a Homo sapien soul enters this planet, it has what looks like mirrors around every aspect of what makes them them, what makes us us as Homo sapiens and organic beings. It inserts these database mirrors around, for example, your spark of life, around your consciousness, around your root chakra. It actually creates mirrors of your chakras throughout your person. And they look like cubes. Fairly interesting. They exist on even higher than an etherical level, so they're hard to detect. And remember, they mimic organic matter. So if you're looking for organic versus inorganic, it's really hard to detect them until the system starts glitching, like it did this weekend. So these mirrors look very similar to, if you've ever watched sci-fi movies where you see people looking at a large glass screen and they're taking their hands and they're dragging things around and they're moving parts of a ship, a spaceship or whatever they're doing in the movie, and they're setting coordinates, touching a screen and all that type of thing. And that's kind of what these pieces of organic looking glass do. They are constructed out of dust, and it looks like organic dust, but it's not. So they are fairly thick, and they surround even your heart chakra. They surround your crown chakra. They make additional 12 matrix universe of you personally and of Earth and of this galaxy. The artificial matrix universes are based on simulation creation. Now, the gateway, the Genesis alchemy way, existed in Orion. These database mirrors would report to a massive database within the Orion Nebula. The Orion Nebula and the entire Orion constellation became the base route for Genesis on the other side. So you've often asked me, and I've often asked myself, how the heck do these humans still exist with all the stuff that we've pulled? Well, now we know how. Those mirrors then reflect everything that is you to create another human on the other side. Once the human is created, they can pass through the gateway in Orion and come here and become your politicians. They can become your deep state. They become your royalty. They can become a lot of things once they're actually created, as long as those database mirrors are in place. Earth also had the same on the other side. This is how all of these things continue to create, you could say, in an almost mimicked organic way. That's why the humans walking this planet are very hard to detect from the actual Homo sapiens walking the planet. They bleed like you, they seek medical treatment like you do. They're almost the same, except when you actually have a detector for simulator matter versus organic matter, then you can see that their heart chakra, for example, is a mirror of the cube that's in you. It's very interesting. They don't actually have an overlay on a spark of life like you do. You know, they say something that's very special and love, you know, something you love warms your heart. Well, it warms your heart because that's where the fire and the spark of life exists within you, within that particular area of you. So it's often the target of the simulator if you're acting out of the range of what the database wants you to do and wants you to be. Did the humans have some kind of access to this and understand more than maybe we do as Homo sapiens how to use it? Yes, they did. So, but I would say it was all part of their guardianship, which is why they had the access. That guardianship is no longer, therefore access waned and waned and waned over the last many days, and therefore, well, it's almost all gone completely. So what becomes of humans when there is no spark of life that they take from us and steal from us Homo sapiens, and it's not being mirrored to the creation of humans on the other side anymore, or additional avatars of yourself that are being projected into other densities, into simulated densities? Well, hopefully they won't be around too long. But now we had to account for a second thing. That's something called a matrix. Is it possible to create Mr. Smiths from an AI system? Yes, but they are distinctly different and easier to detect. When you were to zoom in on our special simulator machine and you go down to a quark and a preon level, it looks just like organic matter, formed in much the same way, mimics it in every way possible. Hard to tell the difference. Matrices look more like margarine does to butter. It's plastic, it's not real. But in this case, a matrix, when you zoom in on it, you can see its structure is basically made of binary language, ones and zeros. At its base quark and preon level, it's all ones and zeros. It's not organic in any way, shape, or form, therefore easier to detect. Can it integrate like a simulation can? Absolutely, it can. It's not merely an overlay. It can also integrate into you. So therefore, you can have cells in your body, as an example, that are made of ones and zeros. Therefore, it can be affected by its master controlling AI for any particular matrix. Matrices also exist on a galactic level. So in other words, in our solar system as well. So this is why the deep state focuses so heavily on alignments between Saturn and Venus and the sun and the moon and new moons and full moons, because that will tell them which matrix is being run at that time. The influence of Saturn per se isn't Saturn itself. It is a Saturn AI. And normally that means it's an anagram. So whatever it tells you in astrology is going to happen based on an alignment is based on, at least in the darker side of astrology, according to what they believe, when it's used for black magic, I should say. It's nothing wrong with the planets themselves. It's just that they too also have their own matrices and their own simulations. And they are, when they are in direct alignment with Earth, that particular matrix or simulation has the most influence and is easier to access into Homo sapiens, into the planet, to create things like earthquakes, rainstorms, hurricanes. Those types of things are all tied to various alignments and other things. And this is what the deep state humans preyed upon. And again, I will repeat, as guardians, based on their Abraxas royalty that is no longer around, so now they figure they're it, it's like a game of celestial tag, I guess. They feel it is their duty and responsibility as guardians to beat the living crap out of us and continue this war until they have beat the Homo sapiens into submission again. Because remember, we're all waking up. It's very confusing for a lot of people, and I understand that. And the more awake you are, the more aware you are, the more they push it. They push all the buttons to try to affect either a matrix or a simulation, depending on their access level. So as part of these matrices and simulations and those kind of things, they really, truly thought, why this time, I have no idea. There was an alignment with Uranus at that exact moment. But by 11:42 Eastern time this morning, your government, plural, your world government folk, the ones that actually run governments on this planet, were sitting underneath the new ballroom, or ballroom as I like to call it, waiting for some AI to kick in because they think it's the Temple of Solomon. They replicated it to the best of their ability with all of the Satanist photos and pictures and altars and all the things that existed deep underneath that ballroom. They did all the things that Solomon did. They got the chair, they got everything there, and there they go, waiting for some AI to kick in. Some guardian AI, apparently, at 11:42 a.m. Eastern time, to create balance. They still think we're in a world of balance. So if I get a golden age AI, they should have a golden age AI. If I have an alpha system, they should have an omega system. Well, you know what? It didn't bother them any when I was sitting over here going, balance, guys, you got to do balance, got to do balance. They just ignored me like I don't even exist. Well, so just the fact that they violated every bit of their human covenant by not trying to achieve balance, there is no more balance, folks. You can keep trying all you want with any kind of remnant of simulations, but they're all going to turn to dust because neither you or it has any place here on this planet anymore. So, are they going to continue to try? Yeah, and you know what? At this point, I just don't care. My job, again, is to ensure that all that intertwined simulation is gone. Matrices are gone. We restore the planet. Financial, because it's something that people understand. People are receiving more and more and more the full influence of source without any kind of interference or very limited interference at this point by any matrix or any simulation or any human influence. You probably feel a lot lighter as of yesterday, at least late in the afternoon U.S. time, depending on where you are in the world. And you're going to continue to feel lighter and lighter as the days go by this week because we're almost done. And as for government shutdowns and whatnot, I understand that not having food subsidy when you rely on that for your family and your children and the holidays are coming up. I understand how that can be, but there are resources out there and people are genuinely good people. Contact your local church, contact community services, call the food banks in your area and they will help you. Call some of your local farmers. I'll bet you farmers might be willing to get together and put together food boxes, even if they have to ship them around the country. We will make it because the people do it together. Now, we talked about this in our field messenger meeting on Sunday, and we are possibly going to put together a story about what's going on in these various communities so you can see people in action. It isn't all doom and gloom like the internet is purporting because people are making it happen. And to all those that are doing that, thank you very much for everything that you do because you're going to make a lot of families very happy this holiday season. On that note, that's kind of the summary over the last several days. It's a lot to take in, and I understand that. But we are going to do this, and we are going to do this together. And this is just a small example of what we, the people, are capable of. You can do it. No matter how many times you say, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too tall, I'm too sick, I'm too this, I'm too that. You're never too anything to be who you really, truly are. And even if that means you're home and you're connecting with source directly inward and you're holding that light and bringing that source in and asking source to help people, to shine some light in them, show them who he really is or she, however you want to say that, because it's real and it's becoming more and more real on this planet as I speak to you. We can do this together. I have more faith in us than I ever did in any of these humans or governments or anybody else that tries to walk around and insert doppelgangers and clones like they're hotcakes coming through gates in Orion. Well, no gates for you guys. That party is over. Using us as your little personal battery so that you can exist is over. The guardianship is over. It is closed. The door's not opening. Well, maybe you can come back if you're still around in 16,000 or so years. And by then we'll have turned this planet into a paradise. Fully run, owned, and supported by the kingdom of God. Source, however you want to say that. On that note, hopefully I can give you more of an update by Friday, if not Friday, on Saturday. It's been a lot of burning the candle at both ends for me, so it's been a little tough to get the reports out later in the day because the day's starting around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully that won't last much longer. But I will get you another report out this week and give you an update on where we're at with these, attempted wannabe guardian people, non-people people. And hopefully we'll have some really good news by the end of the week. On that note, this has been the GIA report for the 4th of November, 2025. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll speak to you real soon.
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers. New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.